It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. My lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold.
Good morning, everybody. Hey, look, there's audio. Hey, look, Adrian started the show. Hey. Good morning, everybody. Today is August 19th, and I want to welcome you to episode 23 of Coffee and Cloud Native. Today's a little different. If this is your first time watching the show, and for many of you joining today, I know that it is, then I want to say welcome to the show. My name is Adrian Goins. Every night, I and my army of bots scour the internet for news and content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native, and every day you'll find me here to share the bits that I find interesting. This is a curated list of content, and while I usually go through around 200 submissions every night and select only the best ones for today's show, well, like I said, today's show is different. KUBECON is happening this week, and it's virtual. It's different from a normal conference because, well, it's virtual. The tools are in place for virtual interaction, but if this was a real show, I mean, honestly, nothing beats the noise of the crowd surging through the expo hall and everybody else, and just the excitement that builds and builds and builds, and seeing people mobbing booths and stuff like that. But we're not going to get that this time. People are there to learn, to mingle, to meet friends that they might only ever interact with online, but because it's all still virtual, I don't know, it's kind of a little bit subdued. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do everything that we can do to connect with the tools that we have. So if you're at the conference and you picked up your virtual swag, you've seen that there are VIP passes with my face on them. And wait for the iPad. There it is. So there are VIP passes with my face on them, and you can use these to get like a drink or a sandwich from your own refrigerator and then enjoy it in the VIP lounge of your living room. If you take a picture of yourself enjoying one of the items while also showing off the corresponding lounge pass and then post it in the Rancher booth, you'll be entered to win a different prize each day, from a box of Rancher swag to a Raspberry Pi 4 that you can use to run K3S. Obviously, I work for Rancher. Rancher's a sponsor of the event, but every sponsor that's there, well, actually every year, not just this year, they're the ones that pay for the event to happen. This year it's no different. The companies that are in the expo hall paid for virtual booths at the event, and without them, there'd be no KubeCon. So I went around yesterday, and I checked each of them out. I couldn't get to everybody before the show. It's funny, before the show ended for the day, but it never actually ends. The Slack channels are still open and stuff, but people go home. So I couldn't get to everybody and talk to each of them, but I did check everybody out, and I did what I do every night, where I cooked that list of contenders, down to the ones that I thought had really interesting solutions that I could share with you. There were more interesting solutions that I could fit into the show, more interesting solutions than I could fit into the show today. And it was difficult to decide who made the cut. But I've got some for you, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we dive in, please click the thumbs up button. If this is your first time on the show, I just woke up. Not literally just, but like an hour and a half ago. So this is where Adrian gets to drink coffee and figure out how to talk for the day. Before we dive in, please click the thumbs up button on the video so that the YouTube algorithm shares it with other people. Now, even if you're watching in the future, this helps YouTube understand that I make content that you find interesting, and that helps me grow the channel and share what I find with more. Let's get started. Huh? First of all, who do we have in the chat today? Hey, good morning, Peter. Sam, Mose, hello. Ariel, Nuno, good KubeCon morning. Chris Hale, let's go. Morning, Tom. Hey, Magalix is here. Welcome to the show. That's great. Steve Jaguar from Aqua. Good afternoon, Steve. Excellent. Yes, enjoying my coffee. It's actually not quite as warm today, so you probably won't hear me go slurp when I drink it, because like, who wants to hear that? Hopefully mostly silent. Okay, so we already had, where'd my pencil go? There it is. We had Flaunt on the show a while ago. It was back in, actually it was back in the very first episode of Coffee and Cloud Native. Do you remember the very first episode of Coffee and Cloud Native? It was like 4 weeks ago. But I do this every day. and it seems like it was a lifetime. I presented their shell operator, which is a Go listener for the operator framework that fires off scripts written in any other language. I thought this was great because I would like to use operators, but I don't know how to write software in Go. I can write in shell scripts, I can write in Python, and well, if you can write in anything else, you're no longer impaired by the fact that you don't know Go. You can script away with Ruby, you can write in JavaScript or COBOL. Probably not in COBOL. Probably could write, I don't know what you would do with it. But hey, you know what? If you know COBOL, knock yourself out. The scripts are called hooks, and they respond to, there we go. They respond to a config flag, and they output a configuration manifest to standard out. So this can do stuff like, well, it can bind to a Kubernetes event. It can execute something on startup, or it can execute something on a schedule. Whatever you tell it is the criteria, then the script is run when the event happens, and it does whatever you wrote it to do. As I said in the very first episode of Coffee and Cloud Native, and as I will say again today, once I get the thing to scroll back, look at that, there's Flaunt's webpage. They have a really nice webpage. I really like web pages that say, hey, here's what we do, here's how you can get started. No confusion. Talked about that yesterday. If you confuse, you lose. And I specifically say that because when I praise a company that has a website that I think is built using the particular marketing framework that I recognize, one of the slogans of that framework is, if you confuse, you lose. So if they're watching, they're like, you know. And if not, go look it up. It's called StoryBrand. It's great. Flaunt is presenting, that's a little bit too small for you to see. They are presenting at KubeCon tomorrow. So that's Thursday at 1300 Central European Summer Time, CEST. That corresponds to 7 a.m. Eastern and 4 a.m. Pacific. Probably not going to get the West Coast to watch it live, but it's KubeCon Europe, right? I'll be getting ready for the next CNCN show, so I won't be able to watch it live. But if any of you who do join me here happen to check them out before the show, come tell us in the show how it went and what you think of the tool. We got more conversation going on in the chat. Good morning, Ahmad. Andre. Hey, Andre. Nice to see you. Joining from the event. Mauricio from Brazil. Bem-vindo. Sam says I should probably move some of my Bash and Docker and Kate's cron jobs to this. Yes, it's like a scripting engine for Kubernetes. It's amazing. Next up, we have Zebrium. We had Zebrium on the show in episode 5, and they've got one of the coolest products that I've seen in a long time. If you go back to episode 5, I was basically like, go watch their video and use this because, oh my gosh. They use AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning, but you already know that, right? And they use AI and ML to process logs and detect incidents autonomously. But they don't just be like, boop, there's an incident, have a good time. They continue to dig in and they do root cause analysis of the incident. See, right there, we catch problems in their root cause. They do root cause analysis of the incident and they give you exactly where to look for resolution. This saves hours of time in troubleshooting, and it lets you not only get back online faster, but also work towards real problem resolution, which is a core component of ITIL. So yes, probably like ITIL. We don't follow ITIL. The thing is, even if you don't follow ITIL, you do, or at least you want to. If you really want problems to go away, well, as long as you're just putting out fires and stopping the thing that's right in front of you, then you'll always be chasing your tail. And the problem is every fire that's here came from something else. That thing doesn't go away. It's like a smoldering ember in the background that's going to keep lobbing, burning boulders over your castle wall or something. And the longer you go on in time, the more of those you keep in the closet, and the more fires, it's exponential or it's factorial, it's something. You get a lot more problems here, and you just don't want to do that. So you want to be able to get back to the original problem, fix that, and that way you can sit around and wait for a new problem. And that's, I've said this before, life is about developing the best set of problems you can manage because you never really get rid of problems. You just trade them in for better problems, hopefully, or worse problems. Try to get better problems. So I stopped by the Zebrium booth yesterday, and I spoke with Larry and Gavin about what's new with Zebrium. And they have some new cool stuff. So first of all, we're not going to talk about that in a second. First of all, they added Grafana support for dashboarding of logged data. This does auto parsing of all variables and events using machine language. I mean, dude, ML, I'm telling you. this is where the future is. Machines doing work for us, but not like the cleaning robot in the Jetsons, but doing the things that we humans are terrible at, and then giving us actionable data that we can process using the things that we are good at, like contextual decision. If I ever learn everything about Kubernetes, I'm going to go learn everything about it. So anyway, Grafana support for dashboard. Now, when I talked to them originally, they had a single node of operation, which we'll call standalone mode. And in their Zebrium, it's a great log manager. It does the incident detection and root cause analysis and all the other stuff that I already told you. We're not going to talk about it. But now there's another mode called augment mode, where it works with other monitoring or data processing systems that you might have, like Datadog, and it adds additional value. So first off, it can detect things that the other system might miss. And you'd think, oh, that's embarrassing. You just said that Datadog doesn't do their job. But no, that's not what I'm saying. It's not that other systems fall short. It's that other systems tend to focus on metrics and not on logs. They tell you that something happened, and then they're like, go look at the logs. Zebrium focuses on logs, and logs tell a better story. So next, it can augment alerts. This is also kind of small, but if I zoom it in, you're not going to be able to see it anyway. So I'm just going to scroll to like, hey, I love this. Stop going through hell. Do they have any images here? Okay, so it augments alerts with additional data that you need from the root cause analysis piece. So it does this with PagerDuty, which is the example they have in this blog article, through a direct integration where PagerDuty sends the alert to Zebrium, and Zebrium's like, oh, hey, let me, dig into this. So it starts looking for correlation with incidents that it's already detected in the logs. It goes on to create what they call a synthetic incident and then continue to monitor for correlation between the log data and what's been reported to PagerDuty, continuing to update the PagerDuty alert, ultimately helping you reduce what's called MTTR, mean time to resolution. Previously, you might spend hours snuffling around in the logs and hopefully finding something, but the worst is when the problem goes away. Didn't find it. You know it's coming back. You don't want to be there. So it reduces MTTR from hours to minutes of tactically looking at a suggestion from something that processes way more data than you as a human being are capable of processing, but then you take action on results. This is a great blog article. I'll have this linked in the video description as well. Zebrium is having a giveaway where 1 out of every 5 people who download and run Zebrium will win a set of AirPods. Come on, just go download it. You can try it for free. There's a full unrestricted trial. Jump back to that. Where's their pricing? Loading. Hey, look at that. When you have it in mobile mode, it just shows that it's free. You can try it for free with a full unrestricted trial. And there's a free tier as well that's free forever. That includes 3 hosts, 1 user, I can read, 1 user, 3 days of retention, and 500 megabytes a day of log ingest. You can get started by going to Zebrium.com. Or if you'd like more information, you can send an email to hello@zebrium.com, or you can send a message on Twitter to Zebrium AI. Or if you're at the conference, go to their booth, and when you get the little thing that says, hey, somebody would like a one-on-one chat with you, have a talk with them. Watch their video. Let them do a demo. Roost. Okay, Roost. When I put together content for the show, sometimes I come across things that seem interesting, but I can't quickly put my finger on how to articulate what's interesting about it or get my head around it fast enough for me to bring it on the show the next day. I mean, literally, like, I make jokes like I had no idea what I bit off when I decided to start making this show. Like, it just consumed my whole evening. And I want to make sure that what I bring you every day is relevant and useful and actionable and all those other things. Whatever. That's why we're here. Roost was one of those things that I looked at and I was like, I need to put this in a bin where I can spend more time with it and understand it. So that was like a week ago, week and a half ago. I don't remember exactly when they showed up in my bot list of cool content. Anyway, they've just come out of stealth mode and they've started to release information about their product. When I saw that Zettabytes was at the show promoting it, I jumped on a call with them and I said, okay, help me out. What do you have going on here? And here's the story. Some of this is taken directly from their words in the call yesterday, but it really helped me understand. Everyone's trying to solve Kubernetes for the developer because devs are special. Not like short bus special, but special. Special, depending on who you talk to. That level of speciality varies from I don't care about Kubernetes to I care about Kubernetes, but it works in a way that's different from how I solve problems. No, that's not true. It works in a way that's different from how I think about solving problems. If you think about it, developers solve problems by building systems that go forth and do things. Operators, I come from, I'm a way better operator than I am a developer. I can hack through some development stuff, but like developers will look at my code and they'll take me out in the street. Operators build homes for things that developers build. So we're almost like different animals. We have different objectives. I was trying to come up with an analogy, like if this was a watering hole in Africa, like one of us would be a hippopotamus, and the other would be like a, and then I couldn't find anything that was cooler than a hippopotamus. So we're two different types of animals. We have different objectives, but we think differently about problems and how to solve them. So the value of Kubernetes is completely different between the two personas, and that's exactly what Roost wants to address. I can take you back to their webpage, but it's actually super sparse. They want you to log in, and then there's more information inside about how to get started with Roost. So I'll explain it, and then we'll talk about something else that they've got going on. Their solution is pretty cool. When we were talking yesterday and I understood what they were building, I was like, oh, there's like a point where my brain's like, aha, that happened. It's a heavy client. It runs on your local machine, but it includes things for developers. It includes a Kubernetes cluster. It includes an IDE, so an integrated development environment for building stuff. It includes a container engine for building images, and it includes an observability layer. So let's think about like a work from home scenario or any sort of distributed workforce collaboration. You've got one developer is here, and you've got another developer is there. One dev is building this, and another is building that. This needs that, so the developer working on this mocks up a service that simulates that. But it's never fully accurate because the dev working on that is continuing to work on moving it forward. So you've got this tail-chasing inefficiency that wastes time, and it leaves the high probability that what is built by the developer over here won't work, or actually, because over here won't work with what's over there, or vice versa when the time comes, because it's just, they're both moving forward. Anything that does that synchronization out of band is slower for the developers to build stuff on. Ultimately, developers just want to make stuff and go back to like playing foosball, Animal Crossing, whatever. If the two developers are using Roost, then the dev that's working on this can publish their work directly to the Roost node for the developer that's working on that, and vice versa. It's a collaboration Kubernetes IDE that links all of the developers together so that as I have work that's, I'm committing and pushing, even if it's not perfect, you're using the current state of whatever my release is or code or checkpoint or whatever. It doesn't have to be like the master branch because, obviously you want stuff to work, but you're working on something that's real. And I don't have to mock stuff. You don't have to mock stuff. We don't have to go through CI/CD pipelines. We don't have to do pulls and deployments or all the other stuff that the other dev might not even care about. When everything's ready for production, they'll be able to publish their code to a headless Roost instance that's running out in whatever the production environment is. Now that piece isn't built yet, but it's coming. Remember, they just came out of stealth mode. They've got their product out there. They're building a community, and they want people to start using it and give feedback. This is a really unique way of addressing the problem. You give the devs what they want, and you specifically target the pain points by just taking them away. As an operator, I look at this, and I'm mostly concerned about the production piece of it. I want to make sure that that is scalable and HA and reliable, and I've been assured that that's what they're building. And of course, who wouldn't deploy a scalable, HA, reliable production Kubernetes environment? Like, that just goes without saying. But I haven't yet put my hands on that. I'm excited to see what they come out with and take it for a spin. Now, you can join the Roost community by going to roost.io and signing in with one of the OAuth methods that you see here. And they are actually running a hackathon right now. There's a link at the bottom of the sign-in page on roost.io. You should definitely take a look at the hackathon. Roll that up for you. All right. There's crazy prizes ranging from $3,000 in Visa gift cards to DJI drones and electric scooters. They have a veritable who's who of judges involved in here, from Mayfield, distinguished engineer at Google, the former head of TensorFlow. I don't know former, but former distinguished engineer at Google, head of TensorFlow. Okay. head of artificial intelligence at Nutanix, NVIDIA, distinguished engineer at Intuit. These are legit people who are going to be looking at your project. It's a fun way to engage in collaborative engineering. You build teams, you learn how to use a new product, you solve real problems with code. This just started on Monday, and it runs until September. So look, I'm interested to hear what you think of the product, the solution, feasibility in the environment, and of course, there's their baby. They want to make it as best as they can. Jumping over to the chat. Oh, people are going crazy. This is awesome. Hell is monitoring alerts with no logs. Yes. Yes. I remember when Splunk first... Okay, first of all, this is a 30-minute show, but based on the amount of stuff... Hey, my iPad says it's 9:41 again. It only does it during the show. That's crazy. Yeah, so we're probably going to go a little bit long. I don't want to cut anybody off, so we're just going to stay until I go through the 3 or 4 that I have left. So hang out. It's a special show. Danny says, can't wait for K3S new version 1.19 with etcd inside. Yes, I talked about, let me take Trilio off the screen here so I'm not talking about Rancher with Trilio up. K3S in its previous incarnation was doing HA with DQ Lite. DQ Lite is an HA version of SQLite that works, but the way that it was embedded into K3S and the way that K3S was using it had some issues. I don't know the details of those. I just know that I deployed an HA K3S cluster with DQ Lite and it fell flat on its face. So don't do that. Back in May, Darren merged in something that said that they're working on an embedded etcd. So if you want HA with K3S and you don't want to use an external data store, you'll be able to use an embedded version of etcd. That's all the information that I have on it, other than to say, yes, we know, and yes, it's coming. All of those other. Trilio. Trilio is not new. Trilio is the market leader in data protection for OpenStack and direct virtualization. But they've moved into Kubernetes with TrilioVault. This does application-specific backup and recovery, all data, metadata, and any associated Kubernetes object. This is itself kept with references so that you can restore an application to a specific point in time. Now, it works with applications provisioned by operators, Helm, applications that are tagged with labels so it can find all the bits for them. It works with direct Kubernetes, and it also works with OpenShift. And you're probably like, oh, it's backup. Like, But it's not. It's really well thought out. For one, it's agentless. When I had my managed service provider and we were working with clients on monitoring solutions, it was important to us that our monitoring didn't sap resources from their environment just to do monitoring. So we did most of our stuff over SNMP, and I avoided agent installations whenever possible. When I heard that this was agentless, touched a place in my heart. It's agnostic. You can back up from one cloud provider to another cloud provider. You can restore it in another cluster. You can do, like, it doesn't care where your data come from. You can pull it out of here and put it over there. It's certified by Red Hat, and it's directly available in the Operator Hub. So if you're using the Operator Hub, you just deploy directly from there. And they, in turn, certify other Kubernetes distributions where it is guaranteed to work. There. Okay, yeah. So because I'm in the mobile view, this is like kind of sparse and spread out, whatnot. Learn more. So they certify other Kubernetes distributions where it's guaranteed to work, and they've certified Rancher's RKE as an approved platform. It leverages the container storage interface to access persistent volumes, and then it can write that data out to S3 object storage or to NFS. It can restore, let's see if we can get up here. Hey, Red Hat. Scroll. Okay, so it can restore to a new cluster. It can restore to a new namespace. There we go. Yeah, that image is small. So it can restore to a new cluster. It can restore to a new namespace in the same cluster. You can use it for backups within a cluster. You can use it for disaster recovery. If you keep your backups off-site, you can have a warm standby in another location. I'm just going to rattle off a bunch of features. It exports log data and metrics to Prometheus, Grafana, and Fluentd so you can see what's going on. It's non-disruptive. It'll snapshot storage and then back it up from there. That's great. It's not going to affect your running applications. You don't have to shut your stuff down. It's self-service. So users within a namespace can perform their own application restores, which takes the load off of people like me and lets the user get to their data when they need to get to it. One of the things that any downstream user hates is when they have to submit a request, sit around and wait. Everybody hates that. It's not just a downstream user. I hate it when I have to call somebody and sit on hold or whatever. I really hate it when I know what to do, but I'm just not allowed to do it. So you know what? Let's let people do the things that they need to do, and that's what Trilio will do. Best of all, this is a company with integrity. Data is backed up using an open universal backup schema, so if you decide to stop using their solution, you have everything that you need to access the backups yourself. The data is yours. They're not going to lock you in with some proprietary schema or encryption thing or whatever. They build a product that has value, and they hope that you use it because it works for you, not because you have to. And if they were to, for some reason, go out of business, which is unlikely, or if you decided, you know what, this just doesn't work for me, I'm going to go do something else, here's the schema. You can extract all your data. It's yours. We hope you come back. There's a 30-day free trial, and there is a pricing page. Well, we'll just go to the free trial page. It's a 30-day free trial, but there is also a basic edition. Oh, I love things that have free tiers. I love it. There's a basic edition that supports a single cluster of up to 10 nodes, and that's free forever. So if somebody like me don't have big production clusters, can get started with this and I can use it. From their site, you can see a demo of the software, and oh, okay, now this is cool. Back on the homepage. Okay, well, I think it's from the homepage, and I'm not going to spend the time to go find it right now. They have a whole lab environment backed by KUBECON. Yeah, whatever, you can find it. They have a whole lab environment backed by KUBECON, so you can actually learn how to use it with a real cluster before you decide to roll it out on your own. So free trial, full everything, free basic edition, free forever. Use it for as long as you want, and if you outgrow it, well, they're there to support you. And then safe lab environment where you can deploy it and test it in addition to all of the demos. Sick. Check it out. Mo asks a great question. Mo says, I'm confused about backup on Kubernetes environment. Why do we need backup solution as long as you're storing all the configurations and YAMLs on GitHub? You're absolutely right. If you're following, remember, we're going to go long, so I hope you all hang out with me because I'm not going to cut it off. Especially since there's 2 minutes left. Yeah, we're in it. Okay, if you are following a GitOps model where all of the source of truth for everything that's deployed in your cluster is sitting out in a Git repo, then yeah, totally. You can burn your cluster down and you can redeploy all of the workloads. But what about the data? What about the data? Like, you need your data back. That's what backup solutions are for. And there are various ways to handle that. You can do like EBS snapshots if you're in Amazon and you're using persistent volumes there, but snapshot storage gets expensive. You're charged for the full size of the volume, even if you're doing deltas. Like most companies who have gushing wounds of revenue lost to cloud providers lose it in snapshots of persistent volume of whatever. I'll just use the Kubernetes term. So you need a solution that not only backs up your data, but that understands the relationship between the running application and the data itself so that you can say, I need to restore this application to this moment in time. And if you're using GitOps, all your manifests are taken care of. If you're not using GitOps, and a lot of people aren't, and that's okay. There's a lot of people who can't because of the nature of how their applications are built. This allows them to more safely make changes knowing that they can roll something back. You can do one-off backups, right before you make a change. The world ended, you just roll it back and everything's fine. Or you could, let's say you have a user who nuked some data 2 weeks ago. You could restore that backup into another cluster, extract their data, hand it to them, and then just nuke it or restore it into a different namespace. Having that whole bound relationship of an entity that represents the application is It gives you more flexibility, more freedom. It's a safety net so that you don't have to be quite so cautious, or more importantly, you don't have to walk around wondering, am I protected? Because you are. Next up, Magalix. Magalix is in the chat. So if you have any questions about anything that I'm talking about right now, I don't actually know if anybody else from any of the other companies. Harish is here as well. Harish is from Roost, so you can ask him questions about Roost I talked about earlier. And we have several people here from Magalix as well. So if you have questions for them, you can just ask them in the chat, and you'll see them. I don't even know if you can see that. I started doing this chat window on the side thing. Today Tuesday? Today's Wednesday. I started doing it. Whatever. I think I started it yesterday. I started doing it yesterday because Monday I totally screwed up the show because I forgot to start it. I realized you guys can't really even see that. And if I blow it up, is this even valuable? Like, let me know. Would you rather not have the chat window in there and just the browser window? Because you already have like me over here, off screen. Because I can take that away. I did it because there are people who watch the show that don't participate in the chat, and it's nice to see the conversations going by. But yeah, so just let me know in the chat if like I can make that. Also, I don't want anybody to like be afraid to talk because it's like being broadcast on the internet, even though in the replay the chat is still there. So no nasty jokes. No jokes you wouldn't want your mother to. How's that? Okay. Magalix. Oh man, we're in it now. Okay, so in your cluster with your workload, you are supposed to always use limits and requests in your workload, right? But how do you know what your app actually needs? Just guess? Do you run it? Do you wait and see? Honestly, I just guess. I'm like, I don't really know. I mean, I suppose if it's your application, but like, if I'm just running WordPress, how much does it need? How much does it actually use over time? So I just throw stuff out there and I'm like, I'll come back and look at it later after it's stabilized. And then I just never go back and look at it. Then I run these best practices scanners on my cluster and it's like red, like you have no requests, you have no limits, you're a terrible human being. And I'm like, how do you fix that? Particularly with the manifest scanners or vulnerability scanners that look for things like I just described. They look for obvious misconfigurations in a cluster or things that don't follow best practices. But for some people, that's just not going to be enough. Magalix strives to not only guide you toward best practices, but they want to help you understand the operational needs of your cluster and guide you to make it run optimally. So it's not just, this is broken, go fix it. It's like, we wouldn't really recommend that you run it exactly like this. We've been keeping an eye on it, and we see that this is its cycle of utilization, and these are our recommendations. We are your advisor. You don't have to do it, but we suggest. And when I say we, it's not Magalix. It's not like there's Magalix people like standing over your shoulder being like, brr. No, it's their utility. I'll talk about how it runs in the cluster in a second, but it just gives you the guidance. The advisors, they discover issues around things like governance, security, usability, resource usage, and more. They have a whole slew of things. And they integrate with tools like OPA, Open Policy Agent. They even have an interface for building OPA policies using Markdown, and they have tools to help you visualize every condition of your cluster from application all the way down to infrastructure. It does performance and cost optimization, and it includes automation for making changes to the cluster in real time with no impact to the reliability or the stability of the cluster. They have this graphic that'll scroll by the screen, not just me. While most of what they're doing happens in the cluster, they also help shift that responsibility to the left. I never really liked the term shift left, but I understand it, and there's not a better way to explain it. So you shift that responsibility to the left. preventing issues that can creep in during development or deployment of applications. You integrate this with your CI/CD system. Oh, um, there's another thing that they do that's really smart, but I'll get to that in a second. So shift it left. Now, cloud providers. Cloud providers, remember that all companies exist to make money. I saw a blog post about Docker starting to charge money for the Docker Hub or changing the retention policy. I talked about that a few days ago and I was like, so what? Like, why should Docker give you this for free? Storage takes, like, it costs money and they need to make money off the service that they're providing. I still think they have a generous free tier and I 100% support the decision that they made. However, lots of people don't. They want stuff for free. Well, no company exists to altruistically give you stuff. If it's free, they're making their money somewhere else. Cloud providers make the most money off of us by betting that we can't correctly optimize our applications. They make up for their own variations in capacity by selling us excess capacity that they're not using. Spot instances or whatever the Google one is, basically instances that they can shoot in the head with zero notice. So they sell us that at 80% off or up to 80% off of on-demand rates. And at those rates, they still make money. So what does that tell you about on-demand pricing? Like it's 100% a gamble. There are lots of tools that help you with Spot instances or fleet management on Spot, or they can move you from Spot to on-demand. But this is the first tool. I'm going to scroll that off the screen. This is it's like this is the first tool that I've seen that works to help you scale your resource utilization from within the cluster so that you get your requests and limits right, and so you get optimal application density and performance, and that's constantly measuring and making recommendations for how to tune your cluster. They have a resource library of advisors. They have a resource library of OPA policies, so you can just pluck the ones that you need and test them out. You don't have to spend the time building them. And they've got a nice extension. This is what I mentioned earlier where I said I'll get to this later. They have a really nice extension where you can attach docs to a policy so that if something violates the policy, people don't just get an alert. They also get instructions on how to fix it. By educating people, you help fix the origin of the mistake, and then mistakes happen less often in the future. If you think back to what I said earlier, where I was talking about ITIL, bandwidth monitoring is up here. Yeah, good. You think back earlier where I was talking about ITIL, and I said that you don't want these burning embers or smoldering embers out there because they're going to continue to throw stuff out. You can fix that through education. 99.9 whatever % of the mistakes that people make are they're not malicious, and it's easy for me to forget that. It's easy for me to be like, somebody made a mistake, and like I take personal offense at it. But people genuinely want to do better. Anything we can do to help people do more and do better, to reduce their cognitive load, to help them spend resources where they can do the most value is great. And I really appreciate that this tool did that. I can't go anywhere on the site. I've talked about them for a long time. I can't go anywhere on their site without finding something else that makes me go, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. Like everything that they have starts with, let's solve this problem. But then it continues with, how do we do more than just solve it? Like how can we add additional value on top of it? Like the documentation thing attached to the alerts. It's so obvious and it's so awesome. I installed this last night in my cluster, and even though I had the tab up, I'm not going to show it to you because it's mostly red. It's sort of like, oh, you have no requests, and you have no all of your containers are running as root. Oops. But it made it really easy for me to see, okay, yeah, you know what? I should really go fix those things because there's no reason not. It brings it to the foreground in a way that doesn't make me feel like I've done something wrong. Installation is dead simple. After you create an account, they give you an account-specific kubectl apply command. The agent runs with minimal cluster privileges, full encryption of data in transit and at rest, and a complete audit trail for everything that it does. It is a SaaS solution, so there's an agent, there's one pod or container that runs inside the cluster, and it moves data out to their platform where they actually do all the rendering and everything like that. There's a 14-day trial with full access to everything, and if you decide not to take up the paid tier, there is a free tier with pricing page. It's so different on the mobile display. Come on. Load. There you go. They have a free tier for 1 cluster and 3 best practices advisors. I am looking forward to later on today, because after 24 hours, it starts to give recommendations for the cluster, and I'm excited for it to come back and tell me, oh, you know what, you should just like slap some requests up on here for this, because that'll be within the appropriate range. Super stoked. Take this for a spin. Okay, we are on to the last one for today. And there's no tool of the day for today, because it's a special KubeCon show. Elothal? They got my attention. Like, okay, run applications in the cloud without managing, actually not on this page, just on their main page. Run applications in the cloud without managing servers or clusters. That sounds to me like serverless, and I'm on the fence about serverless. I run some OpenFast stuff for some function things, but like I'm old school. I'm an operator. I want things that look like machines and stuff like that. So I'm not 100% sold on this serverless thing. But then I saw nodeless Kubernetes. Like, heck is that? They have the same pitch. All right, so it's actually on their main page. Let's go back. They have the same pitch, the same hooks that you get from everybody about reducing infrastructure costs by 60 to 80%. So yeah, I can get behind that. They talk about application isolation, and I'm like, okay, you know, improve security, multi-tenancy. Yeah, all of this sounds good. I spent some time with it. And at first I was like, I need to punt this to the like spend more time with it bin. Because I couldn't find a workable use case for me. However, I am not the demographic for most of the solutions that are out there. Not because, well, I'm not the demographic because I don't have massive Kubernetes workloads that I'm running. I run a couple of small production clusters, but like since I'm just me, I have no reason to run giant workloads and giant nodes anywhere out in the internet. I used to, though. I used to build and manage internet data centers for US media companies like Sesame Street and Scholastic and BET, who do need to run big application workloads. I said, okay, how would that work? If you're running, they have this cloud bursting article. I'll just leave this up here and I'll just explain it. If you have a Kubernetes cluster and you need to run something big that uses like 16 gigabytes of RAM and 8 cores, well, you need to keep a bunch of bigger machines around. Bigger, look at that, I'm not even on the screen anymore. You need to keep a bunch of bigger machines around so that you have space to load these pods. Well, how do you manage your utilization? You're back in the game of balancing capacity with cost. And do you remember what the cloud providers bet on? They bet that you're terrible at math and that you're going to overcommit because you don't want to undersubscribe. That, cha-ching, for the cloud provider. Bad for you. How do you fix it? Do you just not run Kubernetes? I bet a lot of people have chosen to do that because they did the whole cost analysis, ROI stuff, and they're like, wow, we're going to get totally bankrupted by this. Well, Elothal is a company behind an open source project called KIP. Do I have KIP up here? No, but I have their article on cloud bursting, which is a good example of how to use KIP with virtual Kubernetes. So I'll just leave this up. KIP deploys a virtual worker node into your cluster, and you target it with workloads by scheduling them with a node selector for virtual kubelet. KIP then reaches out to the cloud provider, and it provisions an instance that matches the specifications of your pod's requests, and then it wires that back to the cluster over an encrypted channel. This node doesn't show up as a node in the cluster. It's managed by KIP behind the virtual kubelet middleware. KIP then deploys your pod onto that node and makes sure that it behaves as it would if it was running directly on cluster worker nodes. They're like virtual workers that are a one-to-one relationship between the pod and the node. When the pod's terminated, KIP terminates the node. KIP will also work with spot instances. So don't think, oh, it's on demand again, or whatever. Like depending on how your workload is, and that's why this cloud bursting example is good. Cloud bursting is where you might have an on-premises environment, and under high load, you scale out to the cloud, and then, look, I'm off the screen. You scale out to the cloud, and then you reduce that again when the demand drops. So this doesn't work for me because the smallest instance size out in AWS is a T3 Nano, which is 2 vCPUs and a half gigabyte of RAM. So I don't need 2 CPUs and 512 megs of RAM for everything that I'm running. So it would actually increase my cluster cost size outside of what I'm paying for the cluster right now. But this is still a wonderful solution for workloads that need resources because it pairs the instance with the pod requirements. It makes sure that they're isolated, that they're secure, that they're available, that you're not oversubscribed, and that you're not underutilized. Ultimately, it will save you money, and that's a win. The cloud providers, they just want their hand in your pocket, stealing from your wallet. They give you service, but they're going to charge you as much as they can for the service. How much does something cost? It costs whatever you will pay for it. They have an objective to make you pay as much as possible through all the stuff that they do. You have a responsibility, even if you're just doing this for yourself, to spend as little money as possible and get the most benefit. That's market economics. This is a solution that will help you do that. Now, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. You can do the cloud bursting that I just described earlier. You can do HA and DR. You can do multi-cloud fault tolerance. So you don't need to create a real cluster in every provider. You can just split workloads out. Okay? You can do easy migrations between cloud providers. So if you don't like what Amazon is charging, well, you just, your stuff pops out over on Google. That just works. You can do multi-tenant security, and it's source. What's not to love? Now, undoubtedly, they can do a much better job of explaining it and giving you a demonstration of it. This is just my analysis of where I think this provides the most value. And once it clicked, once I was like, oh, I don't need like nodes sitting around with 128 gigabytes of RAM and 64 cores or whatever that I'm paying all this money for that I'm using, a third of just in case I need it to scale into it later. Oh, wow. I got super excited. And so I brought it onto the show today. If you are at KubeCon, swing by their booth, say hello. If you need this, you already know that you need it. And I'm curious to hear how it works for you. So come back. Tell me in a future show. Tell me in the comments on the video. Tell me how you like it. All right. That was it for the stuff. I'm just going to check the chat, see if we have any more information or people talking about stuff before we wrap it up for the day. My iPad still says it's 9:41. If this is your first time on the show, I just started using the iPad in this studio. And for some reason, during the show, when I'm in split screen, it says that it's 9:41 on Tuesday, January 9th. I don't know why. As soon as the show ends, it goes back to being normal. It's like an Apple joke. All right, so Jahed is talking about Falco as well. Okay, so there's some good chat going on there. And oh, Jahed, you're not bullying me. That's cool. Look, the stuff that I bring on the show it's not like I will never say this is the solution that you should use. My objective is to show you things that I would use because I have more years of experience in building internet infrastructure than you probably think I have years in age. The magic of, I don't know why. Anyway, so I want to show you tools. And I was trying to think about the criteria for the tools that I bring on the show. They don't always have to be open source, but I think they should always have a free tier, a generous free tier. Because, as I said yesterday, open source it levels the playing field. It moves the criteria for your personal success as an individual from how much money do I have to how hard am I willing to work. And if you knew my history and if you knew where I came from and what I've done to get where I am today and where I want to be tomorrow, I 100% believe that every single person on this planet has within themselves everything that they need to be successful if they just do the work. So my objective is to help those of you who watch the show learn about things that can help you reach your goals. I work for Rancher. I'm the Director of Community and Evangelism. I care about the users of the software. I care a little bit about the money side of it because Rancher pays me, but ultimately, I just want you to grow and be successful. Period. The end. And I believe that I can do that and still make an income. Stuff. Well, not on the side, but whatever. Still make an income by doing it. Anyway, I have no problem with anybody coming in and talking about other tools, other alternatives. It's not a war. I scrolled off the Red Hat thing because that's a joke, just because Red Hat is a competitor of Rancher. But I still believe that there are super smart people that work at Red Hat and that the products that Red Hat creates are good products. They may not be a fit for me. They might be a fit for you, and that's totally fine. Get off my soapbox now. And we'll wrap up the show. All right, so thank you, everybody, for joining me today. That's all I have. Today was a long show. It's still 9:41. I don't even know what time it is. 8:20, almost an hour. I will post all of the links for everything in the video description and the Git repository as soon as the show ends. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll get a notification when that happens. If you have something that you'd like me to consider for the show, you can hit me up and let me know. The contact details are in the video description, or you can tweet with the CNCN hashtag, and I will pick it up. If you use any of the tools that I talked about today, let me know in the comments. I love hearing that people tried things, what they liked, what they didn't, and I'll bring some of that stuff back onto the show when the tools resurface with new releases and new features. Of course, if you liked what you saw today, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, click the little bell so you get notifications when the next show starts. Come and hang out with us every morning. I'm here every weekday as long as there's something to talk about, and there's always something to talk about. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Have a great day. Have a great rest of the show. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next